From our studios in Scottsdale, Arizona, this is Retirement News Online. So one of the most common questions people ask is, when should I start planning for retirement income? Well, the truth is, the earlier you begin, the more flexibility and options you'll have. But even if you're closer to retirement, it's never too late to put a smart plan in place. Now, the key is to know the right timing for your unique circumstances. How early should someone begin planning for retirement income? That's why we're talking to Jason Sanger with Wisconsin Financial Group in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. How are things in Fitchburg? What do I need to know about Fitchburg that I don't know?
Hey, you know, it's a great place. We got, right now it's the fall season kicking in, so we got all the different leaves changing colors. It's awesome.
Very nice. So I guess let's start talking about income planning. How early should someone begin income planning?
Yeah, I mean, I think as soon as they start saving money is the key. So as soon as possible, as we kind of said there, everybody's really trying to answer the two questions of how much to save and where to put it, so that they can create the paycheck they want when they want to actually stop working. Mm-hmm. You know, I think a lot of times people aren't measuring what that means. What plans can I put in place? How much do I actually need to save with different plans to make that a reality so that you have the ability to stop working someday? You know, there's lots of people saving to 401k plans out there. And I think if you went around and asked everybody why they save, they would say for retirement, right?
Right.
And I'd say, hey, that's great, you're saving for retirement. Can you tell me how retirement income streams work? And probably 99% of the people really don't have a plausible economic answer for that.
Yeah.
So to really know how to plan and what you're doing, you have to kind of start with the purpose in mind. Mm-hmm. How do retirement income streams work? What are the different options for when you get there? And understanding that helps you back into whatever age you are today to make sure you're on pace for what you want to be doing at that time.
So why do you think people don't have any idea about income planning? Is it because they're so used to having the accumulation question and they're working with brokers and things like that who are just focused on accumulating, right? But we always talk about, you know, the analogy that's getting up the mountain and getting down the mountain, but the hardest part sometimes is getting down. Is it just that they're not having those conversations with the people that they work with, if they're working with someone?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, there's a big shift that happened after the 1980s. When prior to that, many people had pensions through their employers and stuff like that. And then in the 1980s is when the dawn of the defined contribution plan era really came out. 401k plans, 403b plans. And the big difference there is they aren't retirement income plans by themselves, like pension plans used to be. Those are savings plans, they're contribution plans. You get matches in them, you grow money. But it's up to every individual now to create their actual own retirement income plan. How do I actually turn systematic paycheck income on the day I want to retire? And because there was really no education given to people in that switch from a societal perspective, it wasn't like everybody was sat down at the time the pension plans all started going away and said, here's what you now have to plan for yourself. So we have to be aware for our own well-beings here that we all have to sit down and say, hey, how's this actually going to work? If I want the ability to stop working, what do I got to do? How much do I got to save? And how does distribution work as part of that equation?
And so it seems like a lot of people, because of the pensions being something of the past, they're forced into sort of retirement hoping. In other words, they're planning one side of it. So let's talk about what is income planning. How does it differ between somebody who's in their 40s versus somebody who's in their 60s and getting ready to start taking income?
Right. Yeah, so in your 40s and stuff, you're generally going to be relatively still aggressive trying to grow things during the accumulation phase. And you do want to measure what's going to happen down the road with assumed rates of return on things and how much to save to make sure the plan's going to work. But as you start to get closer to retirement, like maybe within 10 years of retirement, the rules start to change a little bit. Why is that happening? Well, because time is now running short, meaning when you were 25, 35, things were a little different. The markets go up and down, and you had plenty of time to recover from a bad event and keep it moving forward and growing. As you get closer now, there's a little bit of a danger zone you enter where one big downturn right before retirement can really impact your ability to stop working later on. So you want to make sure you're starting to pay attention at that point. How am I positioning my assets to actually create my paycheck so that I can stop working 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 2 years from now, whenever that is. And that's really when you want to start measuring stuff. You want to get to the spot now of, hey, am I going to actually have the ability to retire? And am I using the proper kind of tools, products, or strategies from now until then to make sure that's a reality for myself? And know that when I combine that together with my other sources, not just my asset income that I can create, but Social Security, pensions, and other things, like when should I turn that stuff on? How do you do that? What's the most efficient ways to do those things? And unless you start measuring it at some point, you're kind of, just like you said, you're retirement hoping, you're really not retirement planning.
And then finally, too, so I think about, with the income question, so we have to get to a point where as we get closer to retirement, we have to start protecting, right? But people are going to be in retirement for 20, 30, 40 years because of lifespans now have gone. I think I read something recently where if you're 68 years old and you're not unhealthy in any way, there's no major health issues, and if you take care of yourself, you're probably going to live to 92. So we have these retirement lifespans of 30 years or more, 40 years or more. So we have to protect, right? But how do you grow at the same time? Because we still have to keep our foot on the gas pedal. And it doesn't sound like you can just use stocks for that.
Yeah, right. Like a traditional approach, especially as you get closer to retirement, is to kind of go more to like a lifestyle type fund where you automatically shift over to a more conservative approach with portions of your portfolio. The issue with that is you have one compound interest curve that's 30 to 40 years long, and the biggest part of that curve is supposed to be the back end. So if you on purpose now go to a conservative type of account, you're kind of lopping off some of that growth potential. That's kind of the standard way of doing it in your last accumulation years. Then as you enter retirement and start to want to draw money from that, that's 180 degrees different. So there's a big difference between putting money in and pulling money out. And one of the biggest risks people encounter at that point is what's called sequence of return risk. And so you really have to pay attention to these risks at this point because they can dramatically impact your ability to stop working and stay retired. So there are other approaches out there, different things we can use in the industry that are made for this zone, for this risk zone that we're all in at that time. Products are made specifically for that. They use what's called the law of large numbers, for example, or the power of pooling to really maximize things and take the risks out of things at times and mitigate those risks for everybody as part of their overall plan for their assets turning into retirement income.
You obviously know what you're talking about. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Jason Sanger with Wisconsin Financial Group, and this is Retirement News Online. We'll be back. Thanks for watching.